before the war started, I told Putin that if he invaded Ukraine, NATO would not only get stronger, but would get more united. And he would see democracies in the world stand up and oppose his aggression and defend the rules-based order. And that's exactly what we're seeing today.
That's President Biden speaking at the NATO summit in Spain last week. Now, the group solidified its support of Finland and Sweden joining NATO, as well as its support of Ukraine's fight against the Russian invasion. To talk more about this Sunday morning and the U.S. role in all of this, we want to welcome back in foreign policy expert with the Brookings Institution, Michael O'Hanlon. Michael, good to see you again. Putin, when he launched this invasion, on the pretense of he was somehow concerned about NATO being at his front door. He has now grown NATO himself with the inclusion, of this expansion now. How badly has this backfired on Vladimir Putin as far as doing the very thing that he launched the invasion saying he was going to try to prevent?
Well, it's been a disaster all around, no doubt, including for Russia. However, he's keeping Ukraine out of NATO. And if you just think of it in terms of NATO membership, having Sweden and Finland, which he doesn't care that much about, join, keeping Ukraine out is for him not a bad trade. Now, Ukraine wasn't on the verge of joining anyway, and this is not a defense of anything Putin's done, but in his weird calculus, I'm not sure he thinks he's losing. I'm not sure he thinks that he's created a negative net effect. He did think he'd win fast. There's no doubt this has gone a lot worse for him than he thought, but I still think that in his perverted, twisted logic, he may be in his own mind winning, and we shouldn't be overconfident that somehow time is on Ukraine's side.
There was talk not all that long ago, 2 years ago, that when Angela Merkel, kind of took the mantle of NATO as Donald Trump railed against NATO for not paying its bills, that maybe the United States' time as the lead country of NATO maybe had passed. Is that changed now in the wake of the Russian invasion? Is the United States back to its primary role as the leader of NATO?
Well, there's no doubt we're the leader of NATO in military terms. We have an $800 billion a year military budget. The rest of NATO combined is about half that, even after these buildups. So there's no disputing that. We have the big nuclear arsenal. We have the ability to get a lot of forces into Eastern Europe, even though you would think Germany, France, Britain could do it more easily than we. It's not the case. That the only way you can get big NATO forces into the Baltic states, for example, if they were ever attacked, is with American power. On the other hand, it's the Europeans who are taking the lead on the sanctions, especially now increasingly on oil. And that's perhaps what's hurting Putin the worst.
We had some items in the newscast earlier this morning where the mayor of certain regions were meeting with the military down there in Ukraine to try to deal with what happens if there are more players on that field right now. One of the big concerns has been Belarus. Obviously, it's a state that has been, kind of lockstep barrel with Vladimir Putin throughout this. Is there any real concern that Belarus might come in from the north and widen this war even further than it already is?
Not so much that Belarus itself will do that, but of course Belarus has been a great staging ground for the Russians, and they've been coming in through the north. That was their initial attempt. I'm worried they could try that again. And if they don't do it with that big, 40-mile traffic jam on the road, which was really military incompetence, they could try more limited raids or missile strikes. If President Zelensky of Ukraine gets too careless, too many public events in predictable locations, they may try to assassinate him again. That's the kind of thing we got to worry about.
You just had a piece in the Washington Post not all that long ago looking at what's been going on in Ukraine and how it may end, how it could possibly end. Now, obviously, Vladimir Putin thought in February it was going to be a quick war. It's not a quick war. We're, heading into the, the beginning of July here. How do you see this coming to an end at some point, and what needs to happen for that to start?
Both sides need to figure out they're not going to have any big new military conquests. Now, that's never going to be definitively provable. Ukraine still wants back the 20% of its land that Russia now occupies. Russia still wants to probably kill Zelensky and take half the country or more. So the big ambitions remain, but both sides are going to have to decide, probably after slogging it out all summer, that maybe that's not realistic and they're better off taking half a loaf. Then you get into a ceasefire perhaps and a negotiation over which parts of the territory will be returned or turned into joint sovereignty of some kind or settled by a future referendum. That's going to be the tough part. But I think it's the inevitable part.
The Ukrainians may say to that, though, that loaf is our country.
That's right.
And you may set up a situation here where we see a repeat of what happened during the Cold War, where some, wall goes up and bisects this country from the Russian-speaking regions to the rest of Ukraine. Would they accept that, the Ukrainians, to have Russia basically operate half of their country?
No, but there are two things that may change over time. One, as they get these new American weapons, these precision artillery, and they get some better effects on the battlefield, but not enough effect to take back most of their land, in my estimation, they will realize it's not attainable to get back most of that territory anytime soon. Then perhaps you get into a ceasefire situation, and you, like in the Cold War, you hope for a change in politics. And it may take 10, 20, 30 years. It may take getting rid of Putin and then the guy after Putin before that could happen.
So what's the U.S.'s role in negotiating that then, as we are arming them and we are sending them billions of dollars in military aid with one hand? On the other hand, are there discussions underway about how to settle this diplomatically as well? I
don't think so, because remember when Henry Kissinger said there may have to be some territorial compromise or at least creativity? Yeah. He was lambasted across the board. And the government in the United States says it's their fight, it's going to be their decision. But it really is all of our fight, too. And I think we should at least help them with some creative ideas on how you can perhaps settle some of these territorial questions.
He's Michael Hanley with the Brookings Institution. Always a pleasure to have you in studio, Mike. We appreciate it.
Thanks, my friend.
All right, that's going to do it for this week.